All right, peace, 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 family. This is gonna be a little rough one because my truck then broke down, and I'm in a customer's break room right now. Apparently, it's between their lunch hour or their break time and their lunch hour, so I don't know how long this is gonna last. And because my battery on my truck is dead, I am charging my phone up, which is not charged up to a great extent. But I came in here and had me a little breakfast, if you would, trying to, if at least, because I've been up since about 2 o'clock this morning with this truck issue, and brought the book in here, History of Ireland by Peter and Fiona Somerset Fry, and started reading chapter 8. And for those of you who come through here, you're going to really enjoy this chapter. I was kind of trying to wait this morning and hope that, some of the stragglers from last night, have went to bed and woke up and feel like hearing a Sunday morning read. But I don't know. Maybe they're going to church and maybe they're going to hell. I don't know. But anyway, just joking this morning. So just to let y'all know that my voice may end up being a little bit lower than normal because I am in a public place and there's some things going on like a TV playing, and there's no telling what you're going to hear in the background. And then I also have to be really concerned this morning about who's listening to what I'm reading. This chapter, just the first 3 pages that I was looking at, I was like, no, let me go back and read this with them rather than having to read it twice or to wait for this phone to charge up. So this is a really interesting one just from what I'm starting off to read. And made me pose some questions as to the nature of all of this. Because um, some of the things that were imposed against the Irish or even the Irish Roman Catholic in this regard um, at the hands of the Protestant, to me, only solidifies why we have an issue over here in America, or why we had one and still have one. Okay. Um, just for some of you guys who like the black white narrative, I just want to tell you that the black white narrative is people's attempt at covering up what really happened. There are too many similarities that jump up in here that says, oh, now I know why we were treated funny. Okay. Now I know why you were treated funny, why they were treated funny, why we have certain attitudes that we have in terms of mistrust across the color line. Now I know I can't cause people who have this proclivity for the race baiting thing to change their ways and not see color for a moment, but see ideology, see religion, see location, see a few other things. I hope they would. Okay, because I was reading this. Um, I was reading this, and I started to think about, well, what if our folks did have land, and what if they did get with foreigners to a certain extent, whether they were dark skinned, middle of the road skinned, or light skinned. What if they did get with them? What if it was a matter of different religious groups getting with different religious groups and you know um, them utilizing what was said in the Constitution about freedom of religion? What if all of that covered up a rather horrendous piece of history, and we're none the wiser for it? What if, let me use this example, okay? Because I look at some people now and I was like, I wonder, in one aspect, I wonder are some of these black folks Irish? I wonder are some of these black folks Scots? I wonder are some of these black folks, like many of you do, are they Jews? Okay, are they Catholics? We got a lot of brothers and sisters that were raised Catholic, especially, in the New York area. They had that proclivity to be close to the Catholics. Really interesting thing. And then, with a lot of us, and I'll just say for some of you who may remember something like this, like the Azusa movement, you know, um, or Daddy Grace and Papa Divine and all that stuff, who had alternative religious systems. For example, um, I think it was Daddy Grace. He was along the Protestant line, and we've heard about, Martin Luther and his 91 thesis on the door. We've heard about that. And some of us who come through Kojic and Baptist and Church of God in Christ and a whole lot of other denominations, Jehovah Witnesses, they're not Catholic, they're Protestant. And I want y'all to really take a look at, listen to how this Catholic and Protestant thing popped off. And understand that, in my opinion, a lot of us are hidden up under here, but we don't see it that way because, as I was telling a lady earlier this morning, um, we don't look at history the way it really is. We're not being taught history the way it is, the way it really was. I mean, in my circles, it's what's in the Bible, and then it's the black folks that, they try to make the Hebrew Israelites and the Israelites to get us to go for that. But it's a lot of stuff hidden up under those narratives. But I just want to remind a lot of people that many of you, are Protestant. Now, was it your families that went against the Catholics? Or was it your family as a Protestant? Was it your family that sided with the Catholics? Or, or, okay, when your families were involved in these various wars, especially over here, um, and now you look back and go, they took our government, they took our this, they took our that. Is this, does this have something to do with the religious type wars of Protestants and Catholics and, what I like to call CPPP, uh, Catholics, Protestants, Presbyterians, and Puritans, colored people's political problems. And y'all coined that phrase. I coined it. Y'all can use it. CPPP. Y'all went and got a PPP loan, but did you get a CPPP loan? I'm just saying because it didn't come with shit. Okay, it took everything from you. Um, but let's try to do some of this before people start stacking in this break room. I did see one person come in here, but people come in and then they bounce out. So I understand that and they listen in the background. But let's read this, chapter 8 of The History of Ireland by Peter and Fiona Somerset Fry. And also, what I'm noticing is that while my phone is charged up, the battery is going down. I don't have a good charge on here. So we're only going to read a little bit of this. We might try to do this in a couple installments instead of taking the whole of chapter 8, which goes from page 165, which is where we left off, and then it goes up to 180, 180, 188, 165 to 188. Um, I hope that you guys are noticing how this story precurses American history, for the whole 1492 narrative, how it is hidden, shaded, and paralleled in the story of the royals and the nobles and the church. It goes right into that. It comes right over here behind that. I hope y'all saw that in the last one, um, with the Queen Elizabeth and Queen Anne's and King Charles and King George and, all these, the Cromwell and all these things that pop up in here comes right over here with those narratives because, we say they came over on the ship. Um, you know, came to these shores, if you would. But also, one thing I want y'all to realize from the last chapter is that it talked about the oath of supremacy, and I've been thinking about that off and on since our last reading, where we will say white supremacy here, and we will say the supremacy clause in the Constitution, and we have one brother who's always fussing about these oath takers, but they start talking about masonry and all this other shit in the boule, but they don't talk about the oath of supremacy that dealt with the Irish. And I make this in the Catholics, and I make this mention because in this next chapter we're going to see another oath that talks about the oath of allegiance. Okay, and then yeah, the oath of allegiance, and it was real interesting to me to see that some of these certain legislations like this, the oath of supremacy, the oath of allegiance, and it's one more, I can't remember the name of it, how they kind of mirror when we talk about articles of confederation from the creation of this country. Let's see, we're hidden all up in that. We are. People cannot like it, but either by, as the church used to say, omission or commission, we're hidden up under that. It's the same stuff. Um, so I want y'all to pay attention to those few things that I have mentioned. I'm skimming just a little bit to see if I see anything else. But anyway, these first 3 pages, you're gonna really enjoy this. Let's start our reading, and as always, we'll start at the last paragraph of chapter 7, and then we will read into chapter 8, which is the Protestant ascendancy. So, in other words, how did the Protestants ascend? I really want y'all to hear these first 3 pages, and we probably gonna find out some more. Um, Couple things I looked up, and when we get to one of them, they're gonna explain it. But I looked it up. I said, "Well, I'll be damned if that ain't what happened here, possibly or probably." So let's try this reading real quick. A couple people came in, they're leaving out, so we'll see what we can do. Last chapter of The Irish Dispossessed, page 164, last paragraph, to remind you where we were the last time we read. It says, the estates of some 270 Catholic landowners, some of them rebels and others absentees, were forfeited. It was the final blow in a century of confiscation. In 1603, when the Tyrone Wars ended, considerable areas of Munster had belonged to Protestants, such as the Butler family and the parvenu Earl of Cork. 25 years later, when Ulster had been planted with Scots and English, a quarter of all the land of Ireland was in Protestant hands. Wentworth relentlessly carried plantation to Connaught, and Protestant proportion rose to 40%. Then the Cromwellian settlements took root, and Protestants came to own 3 quarters of the Irish lands, or Irish land. In 1692, after James's defeat, Catholics had only 1/7 of the land, which they had once owned, left. Unable to follow the vagaries of the English when they executed one king and drove out another, the Irish found themselves, for their loyalty, dispossessed and reduced, in many instances, to the level of dependent tenants and laborers. So, on this right here, people may say, oh, okay, I'm on the Catholic side because, the Irish, they were doing some stuff and some stuff was kind of going on. And I was with King James and, all this stuff. But watch this flip to the Protestant ascendancy, chapter number 8, which reads as follows. The Treaty of Limerick was quite unacceptable to Irish's Protestants. The Catholics, the Catholic enthusiasm of the Patriot Parliament had terrified them. They had seen their farms and estates, which in their view had been carved out of an empty wilderness about to be lost. Armed bands of Catholic Tories and Rapparees, a new kind of bandit, roamed the countryside. Pirates attacked the ships which carried Protestant goods abroad. There were there was lawlessness everywhere. Protestants felt that there was only one safe place to be, and that was on top. From 1691 onwards, even before the Treaty of Limerick had been sent to William, an act of the English Parliament was applied to Ireland, which required members of both houses of Parliament to take an oath of allegiance and make declaration against the Mass and the Pope, which no conscientious Catholic could do. The first principle of the Treaty of Limerick, which granted Catholics the same toleration under William as it had had under Charles II, was being denied. The Irish Parliament, summoned in 1692, was Protestant and determined to remain Protestant. Catholics were being subjugated and kept out of the way. The Lord Lieutenant, who had to placate Parliament in order to raise funds, promised that Catholics would not be allowed to join the army. In 1695, another Parliament made it illegal for Catholics, check this out, for Catholics to keep schools, become school teachers or private tutors, send their children abroad to be educated, as many of the gentry were used to doing, or become the guardian of a child. As Catholics were already barred from obtaining degrees at Trinity College, Dublin, their education was effectively truncated. Catholics were hindered from buying confiscated lands when about 1 million acres were put on the market. Catholics were not allowed to buy or lease more than 2 acres each. Catholics were forbidden to wear swords, a normal part of a gentleman's dress in those days, to own a sporting gun or a horse worth more than £5. If a Protestant admired a Catholic's horse, he could take it from him there and then on payment of that sum. Then in 1698, Catholics, with a few exceptions, were excluded from the practice of the law. Not only was a career denied to young, ambitious men, but Catholics as a whole were deprived of legal representation from amongst their own people. The Privy Council in England hesitated when confronted with some of the vir- virulent, virulently anti-Catholic legislation sent over from Ireland. William himself had hoped to be magnanimous in victory. Ireland's Catholics were not rebels. They had been fighting for their lawful king. It was not their fault that the English, less loyal than they, had pulled the rug from under James's feet and preferred a different prince. But after the flight of the wild geese, Irish brigades were fighting for France and Spain. Mhm. And France was England's enemy. The wild geese were fighting English armies. Out of patriotism, fear, and kinship, the English were bound to support Ireland's Protestant. Okay. In 1704, check this out. Okay. Check this out. In 1704, the Irish Parliament passed an act, quote, to prevent the further growth of popery, end quote, which was the most severe of all, the penal laws, which discriminated against Catholics, known as the Gavelkind Act. Please look that up. Gavelkind Act. Hey, Susan, Grand Rise, or good morning, however, Grand Day, whatever. Peace. Okay, the Gavelkind Act. Now they're going to explain it here. Okay, AI said it a little different, and that made me wonder: is that what happened over here? Okay, but um, known as the Gavelkind Act, in other words, the penal laws, Irish penal laws, okay, an act against popery. Um, it stated that Catholics should only inherit from each other. never from Protestants. And on the death of a Catholic landowner, his property must be equally divided amongst his sons, causing the family to decline in wealth and status, unless the eldest son conformed to the established Protestant church. In a rule which was bound to cause family dissension, the son could take over the estate within his father's lifetime if he turned Protestant and reduce his father to the status of a life tenant. Other laws prevented Catholics from giving mortgages or acquiring land on a lease of more than 31 years. Is this the reason why we got 30-year leases? Never mind, let's continue. Um, Catholics could prevent other laws could prevent Catholics from giving mortgages or acquiring land on a lease of more than 31 years and fixed their rents at two-thirds of the value of the crops grown or livestock reared on it. If a Catholic improved the output of his holding through his skill and hard work, his rent would go up, sanctioning laziness. Okay. Anyway, let's continue. And if he tried to avoid the increase by hiding his improved output from his landowner, check this out. The first Protestant who found him out could take the land from him. Similarly, if a Catholic bought land from a Protestant in secret, any Protestant who caught him out could evict him. A Catholic could not acquire property by marriage with a Protestant, but a Catholic wife who turned Protestant would be rewarded with a part of her husband's estate. Pay attention, y'all. A Protestant woman who married a Catholic was deprived of her property. Mhm. Later on, marriages between Protestants and Catholics were declared null and void, and priests who performed such marriages could be hung. I'm gonna hold off right there because there were several things in there. Okay. One, the Gavelkind law, when I looked it up online to see what it was, it said that basically the Irish's law, or the Protestant protesters, those who were against the Catholic Church and their meanderings, if you would, when that person died, and the writer alludes to it, it was distributed evenly to all of the sons, okay? Which a little biased there, but all of the sons, right? And then because of this Gavelkind law, they brought it in where the eldest son would receive it. Do y'all remember in that history when it happened over here? Okay, okay. And then they made it where the eldest son. Now, what the writer adds here is that the eldest son, could actually take over the estate of his father whilst his father was still living and reduce his father to a life tenant. Is that what happened over here? That's what it had me thinking about. Okay. They were a little more wordy in here, but this is the Gavelkind Act, Gavelkind Act. Okay. Um, that, in my opinion, rolled from over there to right to hell over here and was utilized over here. Okay. Um, and then, okay, as we read a little bit further, they say basically that it reduces the people's wealth. I don't think that the writer actually wrote this correctly, because if all of my sons, me and my husband, not that I'm married anymore, if we had 8 sons and I wanted to give it to all of them, that doesn't decrease our wealth. So I think the writer kind of, you got to read behind and see the constraints that they may have had, because my family would still have the wealth based on the sons and the name and all the family holdings. um, but here what we see now is that they say, hey, the only way you can benefit now is to become Protestant, and then the Protestant takes it over to a different religious venue, meaning the Protestant church as opposed to the Catholic church. Now mind you, I know people were doing some shit, because Catholics had a whole lot of holdings based on the religious narratives of history, and now, you know, they run around saying everything has been abandoned. Remember when they 1666, I think the date we have in here is 1698 and 1704. But remember, the Susquehanna, supposedly the Susquehanna Act, talked about everybody was lost at sea, and the Pope owns everything. So they didn't bring that out in here. Those of us who have been following this history and this quote unquote knowledge and nationality and stuff know about these things. We didn't learn about them in school. We learned about them outside of school through these little venues that we're looking at. Now, another thing that I was noticing here, and I mentioned it, was the part where it said that the other laws, uh, that Catholics couldn't own a lease, mortgages, or acquiring land on a lease for more than 31 years. And I have to ask, is that the reason? I'll say it again. Is that the reason why we only got 30-year leases today? And if it's possible or probable, why aren't we considering this history worldwide? Why are we still on a black and white narrative? Hmm? Is it because we don't know the history enough to affect it and hold any and everybody at bay and not just white folks? Because some folks are just happy to have a 30-year lease because they worked for it. But what if it's latent in all of this stuff that was going on at the same time that migrated its ass over here to America? Okay. I remember when they talked about the potato famine. I don't know when the potato famine is because I didn't look it up per se, but they said in one of my readings and research from years ago that the potato famine was directly related to the Americas. And I never looked into that to see why. But it also said that the lands of the Irish over there, um, they had absentee landowners, meaning landowners that were not on the land while they were doing shit. This is the shit that they were doing, just so y'all know. That's why it's attributed to over here. Okay. The other part, it says basically if a Catholic worked hard, okay, that he had to pay more rent. Like I said, that promotes laziness. Okay, it's kind of like us when we say, according to the Black American narrative, that we don't want to work the lands anymore because the lands are equated with poverty. Okay, so we don't work the lands, and then the migrant Mexicans come in, and I was raised in California, so I ain't trying to be racist on that, but the migrant Mexicans come in, and their little teams work the land, and we become the number one consumers. But my statement is, we don't want to go back to working land because it's too labor intensive, don't bring enough money, this, that, and the other. You know what I'm saying? Is this the same thing, the same protocol? That we won't work on our own stuff because certain things are in place to make sure that they take more than we receive. Because remember, in our history, they talked about when it came to skilled work and artisan type work, that while our families of old were trying to do what they needed to do here in America, that they started jacking up the prices on the goods. It's the same shit. Here it said that if a Catholic improved the output of his holding through his skill and hard work, his rent would go up. We call that inflation today. Okay. All right. You know, many of us talk about it when we talk about black owned businesses, if you would, that black owned businesses often charge a higher price. That, some of our hair salons and hair places that people buy, their cosmetics and their beauty stuff, that we have difficulty in that field because as soon as we start to sell it at the price that we can afford, then some Asian might come in and decide that they can get it in bulk and they got a pipeline to it and they can offer it cheaper. Okay. um yeah, so that's the same stuff. Is it because we are black and white and mulatto, or is it because we are Protestant and Catholic and Calvinist and what's the other one, Puritan and Presbyterian? Can we make those distinctions in here? Because I'm seeing them. I don't know if y'all seeing them, but this is what's hidden in this story. And it's another thing hidden. I'll wait a little bit later to say that. Let's go to this next part where it said that basically if he tried to hide his work, okay, his improvements to the land, his hard work, that any old Protestant, the first one could come in and say, aha, I found you. Let me put it in another reality, if you would. Let me put it in another wording, if you would. He a nigga lover. And what they do, they take your stuff, they hang you, they all the narratives of the Black American experience. It's the same shit. Let me put it in another narrative that's probably hidden in there. The Germans and the Jews. Oh, you're hiding a German. I mean, sorry, you hiding Jews, and they come and they take all your stuff. This is what's hidden behind this. But if we only limit what we know to a specific frame in time or time frame, then it's very difficult to see the whole lay of the land. And some people will escape out the back door because you didn't identify the parties. Okay. Now, with this one, the first Protestant found him out, could take the land from him. Did you hear the part about the horse that he could, that a Catholic, and I'm not advocating for either one, I'm not Catholic. The Catholic Church scares the shit out of me. Okay. But, and it has since the Exodus. I mean, not Exodus, The Exorcist, that movie. I was 6 years old when they took me to see that shit. But anyway, so I'm not saying I'm Catholic by no means, okay? But I even know that in my Kojic Church of God in Christ, Holy Roller, Jesus only, apostolic, non-denominational, Protestant, Baptist, all of that stuff, that's all wrapped up in a nutshell. That when I got into ministry and we were trying to witness to people, I know that the the things that you tell people, do you believe in, Jesus Christ, and do you believe he died for your sins, that all that shit came out of the Catholic shit. So we were supporting it anyway. Okay. But anyway, um but did you see the part about that if he owned a horse for for less more than, he couldn't own a horse for more than five, that was worth more than £5, so he had to have the glue factory horses, dumb them down, not floss like we like to do or any of that stuff, and then anybody could come along and they had to buy it. In other words, are we missing the part that where it says if a Protestant admired a Catholic's horse, he could take it from him there and then on payment of that sum. So if he couldn't own a horse that was worth $5, and let's say he did, that this Protestant only had to offer him $5 because it would be illegal for him to offer him six, or £5 because it would be illegal for him to offer him £6. And this is another way things were taken from people. I don't even know if I want to do that, but let's try this. If you haven't looked up the origin of the word limousine, please go look that up in the French wording and find out why we call a limousine a limousine. Okay, Lisomin. Drop the A, because those are big ass cows. Okay, and it just dawned on me they're a cow and not a horse, but that's the reason why we call limousines. Um, but anyway, he could take it. He didn't even have to offer more than $5 for the stuff, according to what they said here. All right. Then there's this other part. And I forgot about the school part of it. The school part where Catholics couldn't own schools, they couldn't do this, that, and the other. But haven't you known all your life over here that the Catholics did have schools and nunneries and people going to Catholic schools, and especially those of you on the East Coast with all them Catholic buildings up there in New York? Did you ever know that it was outlawed at some particular point? Okay. I don't know. Maybe y'all been lifelong. Maybe y'all fell out the womb year after year, century after century, decade after decade, and all the rest of that being Catholic. So maybe it don't matter, but I can tell you this, as a whole, we were not educated on this and the problem with the freedom of religion over here, how it undermined us. Now, as I'm thinking about this, I also want y'all to think about the statement that was made where and my battery's going down and people are coming in. But I also want y'all to think about the statement that was made when looking at the Moorish history and stuff, when they said that when they tried to tell people in 1776 not to let a certain group of people into government, okay, not to let a certain group of people into government. Is this the reason why? Okay, because whereas I didn't like the Catholic because of the Exodus and or the Exodus Exorcist movie and Damien and Rosemary's Baby and all this other priestly gaudy ass shit. Um, we were not taught the history. We weren't taught the history in church, at home, in school, nor by the government. It was just accepted because we have freedom of, as they say, religion. But again, do you remember the people who said, or what was said about not letting these people in government because they would want to take over? Now, can we identify, were they Catholics or were they Protestant? Were they Irish? Which Irish? Which Scots? I'm just saying, mixed and mingled, twisted and screwed, flipped upside down, turned inside out, like a brother said before. Let's go with this last part. A Catholic could not acquire property by marriage. A Catholic could not acquire property by marriage with a Protestant, but a Catholic wife who turned Protestant would be rewarded with part of her husband's estate. Okay. But a Protestant woman who married a Catholic was deprived of her property. Look at how that works. See, we'll talk about the Mann Act, okay? We'll talk about the misogynistic laws and this, that, and the other. But what if the misogynistic laws on this black-white narrative are actually covering up this right here? Oh, no, I get it. Okay, I get it. We only look at it when we say a Jew marrying a Christian, right? Is that narrative hiding another narrative? Just a thought, okay? Um, Here it says later on, marriages between Protestants and Catholics were declared null and void, and priests who performed such marriages could be hung. So when they run out and they say, "Oh, you a black man and you with a white woman and this, that, and the other, and you shouldn't be with him," and they show us this in Mississippi Burning and Emmett Till and any of these other, is that masking this story here? This is only the early 1700s, right before they start to declare their quote unquote independence. Who declared their independence? Who recognized who? Let's go a little bit further. Let's read a little bit more. I got a janitor in here and an employee watching TV. So we're gonna try to read a little bit, and I'm gonna lower my voice just a little bit. Okay. Let's go to the next paragraph. We're on page 167. And again, my battery is going down, so this is not gonna be a long one at all. Let's see if we can get another 21 minutes out of this, and I'm gonna try to charge this phone up totally without being online. So check this out. It says Catholics were grossly hampered in business too. They were more heavily taxed than Protestants, restricted in their choice of premises to work in, and limited in the number of their employees, so that their businesses were prevented from growing. They could not vote in parliamentary or local elections or into the government service in any capacity, however humble. They had no place in the judicial system. A Catholic plaintiff had to be represented by a Protestant lawyer to come before a Protestant judge and a Protestant jury. Uh-huh. Okay. The law employed and protected Protestants. It punished Catholics. In the very famous statement of Lord Chancellor John Bowes and the Chief Justice Christopher Robinson declared, quote, that the law does not suppose any such person to exist as an Irish Roman Catholic, end quote. I'm sorry, maybe Robinson isn't one of our family names. I'm just saying, okay? Maybe Bowes isn't any of the indigenous people that were over here. Maybe it's not. Maybe. I'm just saying, okay? But here we find out that before they gave us anything about Dred Scott in the 1800s, they were already doing this to the Irish Roman Catholics. Okay, family, sorry about that. That's the repair folks. They have finally shown up. I got to walk out here to the truck, and I only got 10 minutes, so we're going to have to come back to this reading. But I hope you guys see where I'm headed with this. Okay, like I said, I only got 10%, and I got to walk back over there, so StreamYard is going to drain the hell out of this. So we're not even going to make the 21 minutes. Um, But I hope y'all see where I'm at with this. That while we're looking at it one way, that one way is hiding other things that were going on, especially in the religious narratives. And I would have to ask for all these people who want us to be uh, Hebrew Israelites and the 12 tribes of whatever the fuck, how is that going to address any of this? Marching down the street with little purple on, talking about y'all ISUPK and UCIC, whatever the fuck it is. How is that going to help us to address any of this? Because you're still holding on to a racist narrative. You're still not talking about what happened with the Catholics, the Irish, what side you were on. See, my opinion is that they're going to slide you over there with the Muslims as soon as they get a chance, and the Jews, and then backdoor the government like many have done, because this is what they were doing here with the law, with the Privy Council, with the Parliament, okay, and business and all of that stuff. So I'm gonna get off here real quick, y'all, because y'all got wind back here. But another thing I want y'all to look at, if you haven't looked at it, and I told somebody the other day, I don't know if that stream is still up for Smokes, because somebody porn bombed Smokes channel that day. And it's not yesterday's, but the one before that. Please go look at the history of gambling. Go look at the history of gambling in the US and look at the history of gambling in the UK. And you're going to find that this parallels this history that I'm talking about and the history that we complain about. That's what was going on. But anyway, this is your girl Navi. I got to get out of here, baby, because I'm going to have to, if he can't, hopefully he can get these batteries started. He said he smelled battery acid. I told him there was something wrong with this damn truck. But anyway, let me get off of here, and I'll be back as soon as I can to finish doing installments on this, because we're going to undercover as much of this as we can. And hey, anybody who's mad about it, like I told a friend, they can't be mad about it. It's not like I got a secret book anywhere, or I've talked to somebody privately about this, that, or the other, or I'm in some secret and silent organization. Any of this stuff, everything that I'm giving you is stuff that you can go and find, and you ain't got to pay a lot to find it. This book I got from the library. The stuff on the casinos, I found it on Wikipedia. It's up to you to do your due diligence, research it, and come up with the conclusions that you come up with. But guess what? If you think you're going to troll me, I'm going to sink every last one of y'all battleships. This is your girl Navi. I'm out. Thanks for coming. I'll talk to y'all a little bit later.